And here we go, another Thursday night blather. You know, I haven't done this in a while. I've been sporadic. I haven't been doing this every single Thursday. When we last left aside from the steak sandwich Harold Koenigsberg story, where we left off in the Clinton Annex story, was I had just written the letter to the temporary release committee, and Shank actually got a furlough. This was a very big thing for him. He got to go home for a weekend. This guy had been locked up for a long time. He was only where I was to serve out the last 2 years of his sentence. But he was in for some serious shit, which is probably how he got the name Shank. Anyway, I was treated differently after Shank got his furlough. There's no question about that. But I was also put in my place here and there. So I'm going to skip to a different story. This is about Joe Denti. Joe Denti was a bookmaker for, I believe, the Gambino family. He was absolutely the highest ranking mafia type in the Clinton Annex at the time, or certainly in Building 40. And on Sundays, if you remember that scene in Goodfellas where they're all eating pasta and sauce, we had that whole thing full blown. On Sundays in the TV room, there'd be pasta and sausage and wine. After I wrote that letter that got Shank his furlough, Joe Denti took an interest, and I got invited to Sunday dinner. This was a very big thing on more than one level. Stephanie will tell you, my ex-wife will tell you, anybody who really knows me will tell you, I love pasta. I truly do. Not the person. That's a different story. I mean the stuff you boil and put sauce on. These guys made a good pasta on Sunday, and there was wine. I kind of passed on the wine. I was a little bit nervous about the wine. I was doing a 1 year to life sentence, and I was definitely too scared to drink wine. And we'll get to why I was right about that in a minute here. But it was a great honor to be invited to that table. Well, meanwhile, this kid Fred O'Neill, small-time burglar from Westchester County, and a total wannabe. He wasn't just a wannabe. He was a wannabe. He was, but as it was, he wanted nothing more than to be recognized for something more than what he really was. So what ends up happening, somebody rats out Joe, and Joe gets busted for the wine. And Joe goes to keep lock, solitary. So they put Joe in keep lock because of the wine, and he's in keep lock for maybe a week or so. Comes out. Well, meanwhile, we've come to find out that Joe had been ratted out by this guy John. I don't recall his last name. He was an ex-cop. There were a few ex-cops in there. I already talked about Sid. Sid was the lieutenant, though. Sid was the king of the ex-cops. The other guys were just foot soldiers. Sid was the lieutenant. So you had the little cop enclave headed by Sid. Anyway, this guy John, he ratted out Joe. Joe goes to keep lock. Joe comes out of keep lock. Fred somehow finds out. Now again, Fred's the wannabe climber. Wannabe. Fred finds out somehow that it was John who ratted Joe out. Fred goes to Joe and says to Joe, hey, I know who ratted you out. It was John. So what does Joe do? Joe punches John in the face. Predictable. Joe gets put back in keep lock. Predictable. Joe comes out of keep lock. Predictable. So what happens? So Joe, like I said, he punches out John for ratting him out. He goes to keep lock. He comes out of keep lock. I'm thinking, lucky you, Fred. You're going to get thanked by Joe Denti, and maybe you'll be invited to Italian dinner, or who knows what, or your wannabe dreams of being a wannabe. Maybe you'll elevate one level of wannabeness to something grander. But no, no, that would have been predictable in my world. No, what wasn't predictable was Joe had Fred kicked out of that room. That's how I ended up with Fred. Um, but I go to Joe. I'm like, Joe, Fred told you what was up. You didn't thank him, whatever, but you punished him. And Joe's answer was, yeah, well, you know what? If Fred's capable of ratting John out, he's capable of ratting me out, and a rat is a rat, and I don't want a rat around here. Interesting lesson. Interesting lesson. I wish I remembered that lesson when I was in business. So anyway, that's what happens with Joe. Meanwhile, besides getting invited to Sunday dinner, I get invited to play Monopoly with Shank, Grease, and Guru, the three toughest white guys in Building 40. Joe Denti, he was a bookmaker, very, very well connected. And he might have been the toughest guy there because he had a whole lot of people under him that would have fought for him. But these three guys, Guru, I know his name was John, I don't remember his last name. These three guys are all in their 30s. Grease, man, this guy Grease was a brilliant man. John Assalone called himself Grease or Grease Pits, or what he preferred, Mr. G Pitts. And he and I would play chess, and it would be like a wrestling match, like a WWF match. And every time he made a dynamic move, he would stand up and smack the table and say, "I got him, boys, I got him." Everybody rooted for Grease. Everybody rooted for Grease because we played for push-ups, and I couldn't do push-ups for shit. And everybody wanted to see me try to do push-ups after Grease beat me in chess. The guy was amazing. He's 35 years old, and he spent about half his life incarcerated. And by his own admission, he said, "Yeah, you know, it's warm in here, so and I like to spend my winters inside. I like to spend my summers in the streets. And sometimes I mess up a little bit too badly, and I end up spending an extra summer locked up. What are you going to do?" Between juvenile hall and everything else, he'd spent close to half his life at age 35 incarcerated one way or another. So you had him, you had Shank, who had just gotten back from the furlough, courtesy of the blathering boomer, and his literary prowess. Mountain Dew, Diet Mountain Dew, and you had Guru. So they invited me to play Monopoly. Let me tell you something. This was like no Monopoly game I'd ever played before. I mean, in the past, you play Monopoly, you roll the dice, there'd be a little bit of trading maybe, but for the most part, you're going to get the properties you landed on. You're going to buy them. If you had money, you buy the houses, you buy the hotels. You get enough houses, people start landing. You know how to play Monopoly. But you don't know how to play Monopoly like these guys played. And I say played in finger quotes. As soon as I got my first property, one of them wants to trade. So I start negotiating a trade, but I'm negotiating with a guy who's twice as big as me and has spent half his adult life in prison. Because all three of these guys, Grease might have been the most extreme, but all these guys in their late 30s had been locked up for at least 10 years, one way or another. Grease more than the other two. So one of the guys wants to trade with me, but it's not really a trade. It's more of a shakedown. It's more like he really wants the property I have, and he's naming a price that is far below what I really want for it, let alone what it's even worth. And now I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm not being physically threatened or anything like that, but I'm being extremely psychologically intimidated by somebody who wants to buy, let's say, Oriental Avenue for $50, whatever. Make up the price. Again, I'm sorry. I remember playing. I don't remember the exact sequence of events. So one of them wants to trade with me, negotiate with me. He wants the property I have. And I'm on the verge of taking a pretty bad deal for myself, but I don't want to say no. I'm kind of afraid to say no. Well, then what happens? One of the other two, when he sees him about to, you can let him push you around? Yeah, don't let him push you around. You can get more than that. And I'm like, uh-oh. There's that scene in Goodfellas where Joe Pesci has Tommy has shot Spider, and and Spider tells him to go. He flips him off basically, and De Niro's like, "You gonna take that from him?" So that's what this was like. I was Spider, and I had 3 different Tommy DeSimones play Monopoly with me. Every deal I get offered was a crappy deal. Every deal I accepted got criticized nastily by the other 2 guys. This went on for hours. For hours. It was excruciating. Needless to say, I didn't come close to winning. In fact, I couldn't wait. I could not wait to go bankrupt and get out of there. So those were a couple of things that came in the aftermath of getting Shank's furlough. I got invited to pasta dinner. Pasta dinner, good. Play Monopoly with 3 real tough guys, not as good. 4th of July came and went in July, 50 years ago, 1976. I'm hearing all about the tall ships and all this stuff that's going to happen in New York Harbor. I'm up in Dannemora, very, very far away from all of it. But they did recognize the day. They brought all of us from Building 40 to behind the wall to the maximum security facility into the yard, and they barbecued. We had barbecue chicken. Barbecued by inmates. Let me tell you something. Inmates know how to barbecue chicken. It had to be the best barbecue chicken I've ever had. I mean, sure, circumstances dictated it. I mean, the food really sucked. The only things worth eating up until that day were the bread pudding in the mess hall and Harold Koenigsberg steak sandwiches. So barbecue chicken in the yard. Problem was, you couldn't really go sit on the benches, because every bench was the territory of one of the guys doing his time in maximum. And if you watch that Escape from Dannemora video, this is the same yard. The higher up you were on the benches, the higher up in the hierarchy you were of prison inmates. But us guys from the annex, we didn't even qualify to be on the lowest bench. So I was stood on my feet for a couple of hours, ate barbecue chicken, went back to the annex. And that was 4th of July 50 years ago. I missed out on all the hoopla, all the tall ships, all the this, all the that. What are you going to do? But I had barbecue chicken. The day-to-day life. And there were interesting characters. I talked about Grease Pits. I talked about Shank. I talked about Guru. I talked about Joe Denti. There was an artist there named Sal Candido. Wore a striped bathrobe and stood there with an easel and a paintbrush and just painted all day. And he told me something that turned out to be extremely life-changing. I read a lot. A lot of Kurt Vonnegut, a lot of Harold Robbins novels. Yeah, we read the Carpetbaggers and stuff like that, and we'd have discussions about the books. It was really, really, it really was a community, believe it or not. And we did glass painting, and we had these patterns that we did the glass paintings from. And again, it was a community that we shared the patterns. If there was a color somebody needed and the other guy had, it was pretty easy. And again, all these guys, everybody in there is a felon. Every single person in state prison is a felon. They send misdemeanors to county jail. We were all felons. And I had felons sharing their paint with me. So I'm going to share some of the artwork with you right now. I know I'm skipping topics. I don't care. Let's start with this one. This was a really hard one to do. This was a tough one because it's a very large piece, and the only 2 colors are black and white. And sitting there trying to get all the black in while making sure I had the little white speckles in there and the white features. Anyway, I'm kind of proud of this one. This one took well over a week to put together. And thank you, Dad. By the way, my dad would. I'd somehow ship these to home, and my dad would build frames for these at work. So every one of these is custom framed. So that was a tough one. This was a much easier one. We'd get this pattern and we'd put glass over it, trace the pattern in India ink, and then essentially at that point it kind of became a big paint by numbers. So that was that one. I'm gonna show one more, and I can't claim a whole lot of artistic talent on any of this, except for one, and I'm gonna get to that one here. This one was pretty hard too, Old Blue Eyes, because again, when you looked at the pattern and everything was reversed, it was really hard to tell what it was going to be like. So it kind of felt really good when I was done with it. And yeah, I'm not going to put myself down too much. I mean, these aren't easy to do, not easy to do. But then there's one more that I want to share. So back in the day, there was a man named Robert Crumb who was a cartoonist. And this is one of his cartoons called I'm a Ding Dong Daddy. I'm not sure if you're watching on your phone, these frames might be a little bit small, but you can look up I'm a Ding Dong Daddy. I want to draw your attention to this frame that I'm kind of going over with the cursor here. That frame, because I had my Zap comics with me in Dannemora, which was great because I'd read them over and over and over again. So this frame in the upper right-hand corner, best expressed, I'm looking at it thinking, because I did not like being in prison. Duh. I did not like being in prison. I did not like being locked up. I didn't like being locked up. So that frame kind of described, this is how I'd feel if I ever get out of here. So it's just, again, it's very small on your screen. It's, in a comic book, it's inches, a few inches by a few inches. I wanted it bigger. I wanted to put it like on an 8x10. So for a pack of cigarettes, I got one of the Hispanic guys to sit down and draw that image on a bigger piece of paper. So he didn't trace anything. He basically copied it. It took a lot of talent. I mean, that's a pretty intricate design that he copied. And I paid him his pack of cigarettes and I went to work. And here's what I came up with. So I'm going to claim a little bit of artistic, or whatever you call the process of being artistic. Because first of all, I conceptualized of somebody making that bigger, which he did. But I got to tell you, the flesh color, I spent hours and hours mixing and remixing until I came up with a flesh color, because that's a black and white cartoon. I'm kind of proud of this one. I got to tell you, I'm kind of proud of this one. It hangs in my bathroom to this day. And it is an icon of how I felt about the prospect of ever getting out of Dannemora. So yeah, so I get this life lesson from Joe Denti. I play the shakedown version of Monopoly. I played a lot of Pinochle. I learned how to play Pinochle in there. I went in with this attitude that I'd be the best chess player. I wasn't. And that if I just learned Pinochle, I'd be the best Pinochle player. I wasn't. And I couldn't do push-ups for shit. And we'd play for push-ups. You weren't allowed to have money back in there back then. I'm not sure if you are now. Cigarettes were mostly currency, but I didn't smoke. So we played for push-ups a lot. Hey, Pinochle is a great game. It really is. But I get on the floor to do push-ups, and I wasn't good at push-ups. I got in shape. Jimmy Miles being my gym teacher, I couldn't do one pull-up when I got there. I was able to do pull-ups by the time I left. I couldn't bench 60 pounds when I got there. I was benching 100 by the time I left, but I still couldn't do push-ups. I just couldn't. And I get on the floor, I put down my hands, and they'd always say the same thing. They don't give me no Japanese money. I never liked doing push-ups. I never, ever liked doing push-ups. I especially didn't like push-ups, when people are yelling at me and laughing at me, talking about Japanese money. Life rolled along. Glass painting. I was far away though. I wasn't getting many visits. Ted Lieben was the first. I talked about him. He brought me a Gateway Diner cheesecake on my birthday in March. My parents visited. JD and Ellen visited. Wacky visited. I don't recall Jeff visiting. Rich Greenberg visited a lot because he was living in Plattsburgh, so he was a pretty regular visitor. And again, I should try to reach out to Rich Greenberg. Problem is his name's a little bit too common. I'm not sure how to find him, but I should thank him. I mean, he must have visited me 5 times, and no, it wasn't much of a drive for him, but still. Anyway, I really wanted to get closer to New York City. And there was a minimum security facility in Staten Island called Arthur Kill. And I was hoping to get transferred there. But meanwhile, this was 1976. The Olympic Games were coming to Lake Placid in 1980. And they decided that, and it's probably the plan all along, because Building 40 was called Camp Adirondack. I never understood why, because it was just another building in the Clinton Annex. But then what happened was they needed, call it slave labor, call it cheap labor, call it what you want. They needed inexpensive labor to help build the facilities and peripherals for the 4 years from then Lake Placid Winter Olympics. So they moved all of us, well, actually not moved, future tense. So they planned to move all of us down to this facility in between Lake Placid and Saranac Lake. And that was the talk. So by July, which is 2 years ago now, days of being in Building 40 were numbered. It looked like we were all heading to become builders of the Olympic facility. That was the plan. And so I'm doing okay with my time. I'm meeting guys. I talked about Sal and Candido just now. Paul Oatman and I played chess, and we were pretty competitive. We were about on the same level. Like one of the very few college graduates that I met there. He's living in Woodstock. He gets drunk one night. He decides he wants some pharmaceutical, who knows what, that was inside the pharmacy. He's drunk. He kicks in the pharmacy window and goes in to acquire whatever it was he wanted to acquire. Well, he got arrested and he got charged with possession of every drug in the drugstore under the Rockefeller drug laws. That's where I met him. But we'd sit on opposite sides of his bed. His bed was the table. We played chess. Unlike Shake and Bake, he didn't try to rape me in the middle of a chess game. I guess my bar was set pretty low. I'll enjoy playing chess with you as long as you don't try to rape me in the middle of the game. Because I gotta tell you, playing chess when you're not under the threat of rape is much more fun than playing chess under the threat of rape. So that was Paul, and when Ellen and JD visited, they brought me a tape player and a couple of cassettes. They brought me The Worst of the Jefferson Airplane and the new Stones album, which was Black and Blue, which is the new Stones album at the time. Paul had a radio, and so certain songs that come on the radio now bring me back to sitting there playing chess with Paul Oatman, like Sarah Smile by Hall & Oates, Dream On by Aerosmith, Crazy on You by Heart. When I first heard Crazy on You by Heart, I was positive that was Jefferson Starship. I was positive that was Grace Slick singing. That's how much I felt Ann Wilson sounded like her. Another song, Rhiannon and Fleetwood Mac, on the radio all the time. Hold Your Head Up by Argent. I hear songs on the radio. Those are just some of them I'm thinking of offhand. And I'm like right away, 1976. So yeah, there's that one, Dreamweaver, definitely. I think Gary Wright, the closing credits of The People versus Larry Flint. make me think about playing chess with Paul Oatman, who was locked up for possessing every drug in a pharmacy in 1976. Um, Others come to mind: Cornelius Brown, J.C. Clark. Again, either one of those guys meets me in the street is going to rob me. But inside, we had great conversations. Lionel Alston talking to a bunch of other guys, and he says, I got to admit this, when I got my first body, I cried. And then these other guys, I cried too. I mean, this is a side of people you don't see, and that I never care to see again. But, you're locked up all day, every day with the same, well, with a shifting 98 other guys. Because guys would get parole, guys would get in trouble and end up behind the wall. New guys would come in. I had this kind of metaphor of life. I'd see the guys with the low. I was CA 472. I guess I was the 472nd inmate to pass through Camp Adirondack after it got conceived a couple of years before I got there. So I guess it was a long-term plan, having this eventually be the people who would build the Olympic facility. But I'm seeing all the 420 somethings are gone, all the 430 somethings, and now we got guy. It was kind of like life. It's like the old people die and the new people get born, and it was so strange just seeing people I knew for a while just leave and new people come in that I hadn't met yet. It's kind of hard to explain the feeling. The other thing was there were 3 shifts of guards. They got to go home. But it was strange being there, seeing these guys every day, and they'd go home. I guess it was kind of like being in the hospital, getting visits. I don't know. It's hard to, there's very little life experience I have that compares to that, so it's a little bit hard to describe. But my time was going well. Time was going really, really well. We're still working out with Jimmy Miles, and every time somebody got paroled, we'd have a roast. People would sit around at the tables, and the guy who was leaving the next day, everybody would bust his balls. Oh, back to the books. I got back to Sal Candido and why he was life-changing. So I got helter-skelter out of the prison library, and I read in great detail about the whole Charles Manson, Sharon Tate thing, the crimes and the trials and everything. It's pretty intense book, Helter Skelter. And at age 22, locked up, while I didn't really condone the murders, I kind of related to how they were outside society, because like the Patti Smith song, outside society, that's where I want to be. That's certainly where I was in Dannemora. Anyway, I read the book. And then Candido says to me, because he knew me a little bit, he knew why I was locked up. He knew what my basic values were and all that. He says to me, there's a book you got to read. There's a book you absolutely have to read. It's called The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I guarantee you're going to relate to that book. So I requested through the prison library, and they refused to let me have it. So they let me read about Charles Manson, but they wouldn't let me read about Ken Kesey. But what ends up happening was one of my friends, I don't remember which one, got a hold of a copy of Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, hardcover, slipped it into the cover of another hardcover book, and brought it in on a visit. And it was smuggled into me. And I sat there reading in secret all the acid tests, Ken Kesey and Mountain Girl and Wavy Gravy, who was Hugh Romney at the time. So this is just a little bit of an Easter egg foreshadowing, et cetera, because years later I met these people, and reading the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test set that up. I mean, these were my secret comic book heroes, these hippies out in the Bay Area. So I'm doing my time, and we're about to have a plot twist. Everything's going the way I'm talking about. Pinochle, glass painting, reading, working out in the gym. Probably not far away from getting into a better facility. At this point, I'm the storeroom clerk. Oh yeah, I'm working with Vinny Shomo. Vinny Shomo was a middleweight boxer in the 50s. Again, pretty. He was definitely a celebrity in there. Very, very cool guy. I worked with him in the storeroom. I was a storeroom clerk. I learned about manifests and all kinds of stuff, and helped load and unload trucks on the loading dock, and much better than my first job, which was the grounds crew. And I got raised. I got a raise. I was now making 65 cents a day. I started out at 55 cents. So I'm doing pretty well. So that's about it for now. I got a lot of editing to do on this one. I did a lot of blathering and a lot of fumbling and bumbling and flibbing and flabbing, and the boomer has blathered.